Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show. Back to Rick Tex again. Tex Man was just a fleeting moniker. Maybe Tex Man will make a comeback, but for now I'll maintain the current identity of Rick Tex. Or, one time when I went to I got this ALCAT test a while back. It's supposed to test for food intolerances. And for some reason they put Ricardo Tex on the testing sheet, but it had a nice ring to it, so I just went ahead and agreed with it and went with it, played ball and all that good fun stuff. But yeah, Rick Tex is back again, broadcasting out of Elk River, Minnesota, which is probably about 2 hours south of Hibbing, the Iron Range. And apparently up in Ely, they want to have a nickel copper mine up there. So, not really sure how that's going to all go down. But apparently a lot of people up there are up in arms over it. It's a very controversial subject. I mean, I don't really know a whole lot about it. Polymet mining, they're the ones who are getting in on it and want to, break ground and get inside and get all the nickel and copper and all that good fun stuff. I suppose when you consider, computers right now, most of them, their electrical circuitry is made on printed circuit boards, which is copper, silicone, and fiberglass, that kind of stuff. Now, what they want to do in the future at some point is to convert that to fiber optics. That way, rather than pushing electrons along a little path of copper, they can shoot a light down little tubes. So that's way faster. So, electrons travel, they don't really travel as quickly as the speed of light or wavelength or visible light, whatever it is. So that's why the fiber optic computer systems would be significantly faster, and I think probably store more bandwidth and all that good fun stuff too. So maybe we won't need much copper in the future, but I suppose we'll see. Once you get the fiber optic systems in place, you still need to have the transceiver and receiver circuitry, and that'll probably involve some type of precious metals and minerals. Silver is actually a slightly better conductor than copper, but it's more rare, hence the price of it is obviously greater than copper. But if you wanted to make your own fancy electric motor and all that goofy stuff, you'd probably want to do, you wouldn't want, say you had an unlimited budget, you would probably want to just throw some silver and gold in there for the windings and everything, the armature, the stator coil, the rotor, and then you'd have a lot less resistance. The eddy currents would be significantly less. You'd have a lot more power and all that good fun stuff, and a lighter weight too, so it'd just be a lot better off than that way. But yeah, of course, there's going to be, it's a rare metal, so it's going to cost you. With an unlimited budget, all things are possible. You might wonder, people that have millions or billions of dollars, why they don't do cool stuff like build some giant electric turbine that's run with silver, copper cables, and they can efficiently transmit electricity across the grid. Well, yeah, I guess I don't really have a good answer for that, ladies and gentlemen. That's the spice of life, though. There's variety. Everyone's a little bit different in how they see things and how they choose to spend their money. For example, a lot of people buy lottery tickets, and a lot of people don't. Basically, a lottery ticket, though, is just a tax. It's a voluntary tax, more or less. There is the allure of possibly winning, and then you have to pay back a lot of your taxes, or you have to pay back a lot of your winnings in actual taxes. So you're not really winning in that regard. But if you get a few billion, I'm sure you could probably afford to pay back $1 billion in taxes, or just go put it in some offshore banking account and not have to pay it back, which seems to be the path that a lot of individuals choose to take. Not one that I really recommend, but whatever. See, if you're going to use the infrastructure in a certain country, municipality, or city, county, whatever, it only makes sense to go ahead and pay the voluntary tax, or the mandatory taxes. The war tax, which is nowadays known as the income tax, the sales tax, property tax, the inflation tax. The inflation tax is probably the most debilitating one. How the inflation tax works is the Federal Reserve, they'll be in cahoots with someone, make backdoor deals, create trillions of dollars out of thin air, give it to them, they can do whatever with it what they want. Now, it sounds like a pretty good deal. I mean, if somebody was to just show up at your house and give you a few million and pat you on the back and say, good luck, have fun, don't hurt yourself, don't spend it all in one place, you'd probably be pretty happy about that and think you made a good deal, the art of the deal. So, unfortunately, that's how our banking system works, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a lot of people say, well, money doesn't grow on trees. So, if that's the case, then why do banks have branches? Now, getting back to the subject matter, we have some news articles for today. I saw a few interesting ones on naturalnews.com. One of them was particularly interesting because for me, I was a bit skeptical on reading it. Then I read it a little bit more, became more skeptical, and I read it into it a lot bit more. And the skepticism probably neutralized after that. So, as far as personal judgment on this next topic, you're certainly not going to get any direct yes or no from this talk show, ladies and gentlemen. So Himalayan salt lamps should be in every house. Now, you've probably seen them before. They look like a cone type thing, and they're red or white and basically look like somebody put a rock on a lamp base and put it in a box and sold it at Target. So Himalayan salt lamp is kind of the bigger new thing nowadays. And Himalayan salt is probably better than regular iodized salt, or even the non-iodized salt. Because non-iodized salt, it's heated up to a really high temperature and it's completely adulterated, and it's basically good for nothing except clogging up your bloodstream and giving you a higher probability of a heart attack. Now, you do need sodium. Most people can get sodium in any type of diet. Potassium is probably the biggest one that you do need to consider. You can get it in fruit, vegetables. It comes in trace amounts in basically any natural foods. Bananas got a lot of it. But getting back to the Himalayan pink salt, or the Himalayan salt lamps, what they do is they attract water molecules which can carry dust, pollen, or bacteria with them. Now, initially when you hear that, you think, well, in Minnesota during winter that'd be horrible, because then you're dehumidifying the air, which is something that you don't really want to do. As I showed in the previous episode, the relative humidity in this room with all the indoor plants is about 50%, which is ideal. And no, if you add a Himalayan pink salt lamp, then all of a sudden you're going to remove the water from the air, and then it'll reduce the humidity to a level that you don't want it to be. Then you'll get dry skin, you'll get dandruff on your hair, and people call you Mr. Dandruff. So, from that standpoint, maybe it'd be a good idea to unplug the Himalayan salt lamp during wintertime in Minnesota. But going on, they release negative ions that react and neutralize the unhealthy positive ions. This occurs when the lamp heat evaporates the water molecules. So to release the negative ions, they need to take the moisture out of the air. It's not like they're just creating the negative ions out of nothing. And then the negative ions will bond with the positive ions, and then that'll neutralize them, and then they'll just be neutrons, or whatever those things are called. I mean, yeah, it sounds all well and great so far. I mean, other than dehumidifying effect, I mean, negative ions, that's great. And now if you get air purifiers too, some of them probably, I've only had one, but I'm sure most of them have the option of negative ions, emitting them in the air and all that. And apparently there are some health detriments to them, so as far as what they are, don't really have that information readily available right now. But according to naturalnews.com, when negative ions reach the blood, they increase serotonin. Now, serotonin, you've probably heard of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So when you hear that, then you think, well, that all the mass shooters were on SSRI drugs. So you think like serotonin is probably a bad thing. But in all reality, serotonin is actually great. It helps moderate your sleep, reduce anxiety, reduce depression. It's just overall better health and well-being. Now, if you were to look at an image of your brain, they got all the blood arteries and veins and everything. So you need to have healthy blood to have a healthy brain. It seems like a no-brainer. And the serotonin, it's a hormone that just causes better mood. And if negative ions reach the blood and they increase serotonin, that's a very desirable effect. Now, positive ions, they reduce blood and oxygen supply to the brain. So, again, it's not really an ideal situation. If your brain is only about 2% of your entire body weight, but it requires almost 20% of all your cardiovascularity and blood and all that. So it requires an enormous amount of energy to run it based on its mass and its girth. Now, yeah, some people got smaller brains or bigger brains than the other people, so maybe they'd be more or less of a ratio compared to the rest of their body. The fact is, your brain requires a lot of energy to run, so having healthy blood will allow it to run at an optimal level. Now that we got AM, FM radios, television signals, wireless, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, narrowband, IoT, random CB radios that people are pumping out of their basement, you're going to have a lot of electromagnetic radiation. So these negative ions, they apparently can neutralize a lot of these EM radiation wavelength or waves and all that. So that's another benefit of the true Himalayan salt. Now, one thing to bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, is that you don't want to get fake, knockoff, cheap crap. You want to get that true Himalayan salt, which is mined in Kurwa or Pakistan, the Mount Himalayas or whatever they're called. Pikes Peak, Himalaya, wherever the Himalayan mountains are. So maybe someday if you go hiking, you get those big boots on and the cargo shorts and a backpack and everything, you'd probably pick up mine some Himalayan pink salt and bring it back and make your own lamp out of it. Then you know for a fact, with absolute certainty, that it is the real deal. And that it's not some garbage that's, manufactured in Jamaica or some guy's basement over in East Bethel, Minnesota. So, you want to get the good stuff. And there's another article too. Now we're gonna double deal today. There's just so much good information on there. Normally I like to do one article. And actually what we might start doing is we don't really plug for future shows. So it might be a good idea to do a preview of an article for the next show. But for the most part, we kind of fly by the seat of the pants. We don't know if the show is going to be canceled today, tomorrow, hell, maybe even a minute from now. The producers will show up and turn the lights off and call it good. So we don't really look too far out in the future, but there was another article here that seemed very important. Does removing sugar starve cancer cells? So what they found, there's obviously different variations of cancer cells. They're not just all one thing. Cancer is sort of a widespread term that they give to a bunch of radical cells that they don't really know what they're doing or why they're growing inside a human host. They're basically parasites, more or less. But there's a certain type of cancer cell that they're dealing with here. What they found is that when they deprive those cells, when they deprive those cells of sugar, it causes a reaction across the cell membrane, and it leads to an increased intake of calcium ions, which causes the cell to die off. Now, you may have heard this before, but your pineal gland, if you eat a bunch of fluoride or drink a bunch of fluoride or swallow your toothpaste for some reason, maybe it tastes good, then your pineal gland will get calcified. And you've probably heard about other things being calcified and how it's not a very good thing. Like, for example, if you have a drawing or a rock sculpture or something, then it gets calcified. It's not an ideal effect. The calcium bonds to it and it basically takes it over. Sort of, I guess you could say it acts like a parasite in that regard. But for humans, their bones are mostly, calcium, silica, all that good stuff. So I'm sure you heard it numerous times, calcium's healthy for you. So the objective, or the idea behind this study here is that if you reduce your sugar intake, preferably to none, to zero, especially refined table sugar. That's one of the big problems too. Sugar is just all jumbled up into one giant conglomeration of several different types of saccharides, because you can get sugar from fruit, you can get sugar from Laffy Taffy, you get sugar from beans, you can get sugar from apple juice, and it's all going to look, on the label it's going to look the same, but in reality it's very much different. Now yeah, under a microscope it might have the same carbon, hydrogen, oxygen bonds, or might appear same to the human visible eye. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot more that goes on in this world than the 5 human senses can pick up. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Way more than that. So you always had to keep that in mind, because science is always changing and evolving too. Science nowadays may refined sugar and fruit sugar may be a totally different classification in the next 100 years. Like for example, fats and proteins, totally different. So that might be the difference between table sugar and fruit sugar. And by table sugar, I mean the sucrose, the stuff that they heat up in, like the iodized salt or the table salt or whatever. It's just garbage, more or less. It's used to add flavor and probably to add clogging to your arteries. And in the case of sugar, it's used to add fuel to your cancer cells. So, yeah, I mean, there's really no scientifically studied benefit to a high sugar diet or even a low sugar diet, or even the sugar in general, or any kind of sweeteners really. Aspartame, sucralose, high fructose corn syrup, it's just all bad stuff. It should be classified as probably a type 1 drug, right up there with cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin. Apparently, well, I don't know if those are all type 1 drugs, some of them might be type 2. But for the most part, it's just all bad news, definitely something you probably want to avoid, if you can. And the thing is, if you stop eating sugar for long enough, eventually your taste buds will very much enjoy just simple, not what you would perceive as simple basic foods. And for example, earlier in the day, I ate some black beans that I cooked up in the crock pot, then you put them in a jar and you eat them over the course of a week. So right after I cooked them up, I ate a few of them, they're delicious. There is more carbohydrates in black beans than most of the types of food that I eat. Then right after eating the black beans, then when you're eating walnuts, cashews, or macadamia nuts, they don't really have as much flavor because your taste buds are kind of coated by the beans, and then you're not really getting the flavors of the macadamia, cashews, and walnuts. Now, without eating the black beans, if you eat the macadamia, cashews, walnuts, they're absolutely delicious, and they're something that you enjoy and maybe even have a craving for, but again, it's difficult to call it a craving if it's not really an addiction, if it's a necessity to your existence and survival. So, with that being said, once you cut down on sweets and sugars and everything too, you might have relapses where you smell it and think, oh man, that's so great, it'll taste great, but when you consider the deleterious side effects and the health ramifications of it, it's really not worth the 5 seconds of pleasure for the who knows how long the health detriments could last too. And there are occasions where I relapse a little bit too. But a pizza, for example. There was one time a couple weeks back I went to somebody's house and they're cooking up a frozen pizza. And at one point in my life I went through it, pretty much probably everybody does, where you eat frozen pizzas every single day. And I was delivering pizzas back then, so I'd eat a frozen pizza during the day and work at a pizza place tonight and eat pizza there. But nowadays, trying to do the whole low-fat thing and trying to avoid the refined flours and bleached flours and all the other garbage that goes into pizzas, it's just a good idea to stay away from it, for me at least. For other people, maybe it would be healthy and great and make you great again and everything too. But yeah, the smell of the pizza, definitely a relapse. It trigger those saliva glands. It's like, oh man, this smells delicious, can't wait to eat it. But, and then in front of your mind, you have to say, all right, I can't really eat this stuff. Not going to be good in 20 minutes, an hour, 20 days from now. So it's just best to avoid it and try to. Situational avoidance is always the thing to consider too. Temptations in life are always significant. If somebody knocks on your door and says they got $1 million to give you that they printed off in your basement, you think like, well, yeah, it sounds all well and great and everything, so what do I have to do? And then they say, well, you gotta go take a picture of somebody, and it's like, well, okay, it's $1 million is a lot of money, but I can't imagine why someone would want a picture taken of them. So, it's, temptation, if the rewards are there, it becomes great. So it's best just for situational avoidance. Somebody offers you $1 million, be like, it probably is a good idea to, at least ask them what their objective is or what they would like out of you. But more than likely, it's probably a malicious intention. It's the whole too good to be true thing, so that's probably. And then going with your gut too helps a lot. But yeah, for the most part, we're getting a bit off the rails here at the end, ladies and gentlemen. But well, we reached the conclusion of the show. We're certainly glad to have you here. Maybe we'll be back tomorrow, God willing, and we salute you. We thank you as well. Good night.